And also bring in the flowering ones. There's two different coloured flowering ones. There's a pink flower and a white flower. So we'll bring in pink. There are two variations on each of the flowering ones as well. So there's two pink flowering bushes and two white. They're just a slightly different shapes so that it's less obvious we're reusing the same object. Okay, they're the pink. Let's bring in the white ones. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add them all to our foliage tool and paint with them all at the same time, I think. So let's bring in the second version of the white one. Oh, sorry, Dad, I didn't see your message there, dude. Sorry. That auto exposure is so strong, yeah. One of the first things you do is disable it, yeah. Also, for a quick fix, you can select lit in the viewport mode. Thanks for the tip. Yep. You can actually turn it off here in the show command as well. My apologies again, dude. I just saw your message. Yeah, the exposure is annoying. I like to keep it on though because it helps me to judge whether some sections of the landscape are going to show up too dark. Because I'm going to keep it turned on when I do the cinematic. But you are quite right, it can become very annoying very quickly. Yeah, there is a command in the show command to turn it off as well. I think it's called eye adaptation. I think that's the one that does the darkening and lightening. If it gets too annoying for me, I certainly will turn it off. But thanks for the tip. Alright. We have our azalea bushes, and again, I'm just going to open one up to show you what it is. It's just a flowering bush, basically. Just helps to add a bit more interesting colour with the flowers on it along our path. Again, we didn't use them in our forest in the background. I'm only going to be using them on the path. So let's go into... Cool. And thanks for popping into chat. No, it's always great if you guys suggest something that I'm not aware of. I always welcome that. But yeah, again, I do know you can turn off eye adaptation here in post-processing. That'll stop it. But I do want to see the shadowing when I'm doing my painting here. Can get very annoying though. The reason it's happening is because of this paint circle. It's white, so when it gets close to the camera, the eye adaptation kicks in and makes everything dark. You see when I pull it away from the camera, everything goes back up again. I wish Epic should turn that off with this paint sphere. It shouldn't affect eye adaptation. Anyway, let's decide where we want to put our azalea bushes, I think. And I want them to go basically along the path. So I think maybe a couple to begin with around our Chanels here. Let's pull them into our foliage editor. So we have a normal azalea bush here which has no flowers on it at all. I'm going to make sure I turn off my Chanel. And we have a pink flowering one. And we have a second variety of pink flowering one. We've got a white flowering one and a second variety of white flowering one. So I'm just going to make sure just those azalea bushes are actually selected, turned on with that checkbox, and everything else is still turned off. Yep. Again, we're going to have to check our scale here, so I'm just going to paint an area in to begin with to check whether our scaling is correct or not. And I think they may be just a tiny bit too small. I'm just going to undo that paint. and work with that scale. So I think if we take it up to maybe 1.5 is the minimum, and we'll go to 2.5 as the maximum. We'll do that for all of the bushes. You probably don't need as many varieties here as I have. I just want to make sure that it does look quite different when we paint in our bushes. You can probably get away with 2 instead of 4 or 5 like I'm using. And again, I'm not making a game, so I'm not so concerned about memory usage. We're going to be making a cinematic. Do bear in mind though, it will reuse the same textures if it can, the same materials. 1.5 to 2.5. Okay, so 1.5, 2.5, 1.5, 2.5, and 1.5, 2.5, good. I'm going to pull back a bit on the density though. I don't want them painted in a bit really thick. I want to make sure they're not too thick. I have my density paint value up here, but I always like to do it based on the actual object itself as well. It gives me a bit more control than using the global paint density value up here, because I can adjust it for each individual plant as opposed to doing it for all of the plants. So the plain one, I'm going to knock the density back quite a bit because I don't want so many of the plain one. I want more of the flowering bushes. This is a similar setting that you have if you use Eon View, which you guys saw me using when I did the Baroque Garden Terrace. You can adjust your number of instances in that program the same way as you do here in Unreal. So if you're familiar with using Unreal's paint foliage tool and you want to jump into Eon View to give that a go, because remember there's a PLE version you can download for free from Eon View's website and install and use to try the program out. So if you're familiar with the foliage editor in Unreal, you won't have a problem using it in Eon View either. Alright, let's paint some of these azalea bushes in. Let's start by painting some through here. Now, again, I'm just looking to make sure it's not painting them too thick. And it is painting them quite thick. Going to undo it, and we're going to pull back a bit on our pull back a bit on our density again. It's going to be a bit of trial and error here because we are working with 5 different bushes. Let's just paint them in again. I'm just going to wait for it to finish compiling its shader here so I can get a better idea of just how thick those bushes are being painted in. It's nearly there. I think we should be okay. I don't think they're painted in too thickly, and you see we get a nice mix between the white and the pink. I think once it's finished compiling its shader as well, I'm going to do a save because I have autosave turned off in Unreal. It's just a habit I get into with all the software I use. With 3D Studio Max, I always turn off autosave. When I use Eon View, I turn off autosave. And simply because I don't like being interrupted when I'm working, when the program is saving out. It can sort of freeze a program for, a few seconds, and I find that annoying. So I always turn it off. I still think we might be a bit thick. But our shaders are recompiled, so we don't have to worry about compiling them again. I'm just going to do a quick save though before we do anything. We've imported a few different meshes here, so. Okay, let's pull back on our density again. Let's go to 10. In fact, we'll go to 5 on the bush without flowers, and we'll go to 10 on the others. Okay, let's do another test paint. And I think that's better. We've got a lot fewer of those bushes being painted in now. It looks more natural. Let's paint some through here, just amongst our Chanels. Every time I say that word Chanel now, it reminds me of I can't remember the name of the program now. American Spring Queens, I think it was called. The Chanels. Alright, so let's get our flowers happening along our path. Again, I'm not going to paint them all the way along like that. I'm just going to paint them in here and there. Some through the background, some in the foreground. I want them around my steps because they'll make a nice feature going up to the stairs. Let's go back this way. Let's put a bunch of them here, and maybe some around the tree, and some in the background. Alright, I'm just going to get out of paint mode now, and we'll zoom back in and check out our handiwork. Again, it just helps to define the pathway itself. So we come through our main gate, which will be open when we do our cinematic. I'll open up one side so the camera can fly through. We have our Chanels on either side, and we have some of our flowering azalea bushes now. And that's all well and good, but you're noticing all of our plants here are at about the same height. Again, this gets more back into landscape gardening as opposed to modelling, but it's the same thing because we're painting in flowers here. You'll notice that all of our plants are pretty much the same height. That's not good from a visual point of view because you want to add more interest. So what we're going to do is we're going to introduce some higher foliage, I think, just to give it that interest that it needs. And I think the best way to do that will be to bring in conifer. We're using conifers here for our raised terrace section, these little plants in the pots. So I think conifers through here would look really interesting as well. So let's do that. Let's import a, I can't remember, was it a blue spruce? I'm just trying to remember exactly what I called it. Yeah, I think it's this blue spruce conifer here. And again, it's a different type of tree from all of the elm trees and things that we've got going on in our forest in the background and our forest in the foreground here, our autumn elm tree look. It'll just help to break up the type of tree and also help to add a bit more height interest along our path. We don't want to pull them too far forward though. Again, I'm just going to wait for that shader to compile. Now, I'm not going to be using the foliage tool up here to paint these in. I'm going to do them by hand because we don't want as many and I want a bit more control. We can certainly, once we've placed a grouping, copy that grouping for the rest of the path. Let's pull in our elm here. And again, I'm just going to get down about path level to check our height. I'm going to scale this one up a little bit. We'll decide where we want to place the first one, and I think one in behind here would look good. And this one back here I want to make a bit higher. And as Bob Ross says, you can't just have one tree because it'll get lonely, so let's do a duplicate here. But we're going to scale this one back a bit so it's a bit younger. We're going to select both of them and duplicate them again. And to keep that balance, we're going to move them to the opposite side of our entryway. Not outside, but inside. And I may just rotate that grouping around a little bit as well. Alright, let's add some through the rest of our pathway. So again, I'm going to take both of those and duplicate them. I'm going to rotate them. I think we'll move those in here. I'm just checking if they actually are sitting in the ground, and they are. I may just scale these ones back just a little bit. Okay, let's duplicate them again. And we'll move them over here. Okay, let's grab this group of two, duplicate it. We're going to move it back into this section through here. I'm going to rotate it around so it's less obvious it's a duplicate of the group we've just worked with. I'm going to grab one of them in the background and do another duplicate. We're going to scale this one up to be a bit older and a bit bigger. Okay, so we're going to take this group of 3 now and duplicate them again. Move them over. Back into here, I think. And we'll rotate it around. Again, I just do these rotations on things that I copied by duplicating, just to make it less obvious that it's the same tree group that we're using over and over again. Again, that's why I've chosen a conifer like this, because the shape of them generally, pardon me, will look the same regardless of what angle you're looking at it from, and all the trees will keep the same sort of shape. They're not unique looking like a lot of the elm trees are. So it helps with hiding the fact that we duplicate the same tree over and over again. So not only does it benefit us in that it looks like a different type of tree to all the rest, it's a benefit because the shape of the tree is less likely to be noticed as being copied again and again and again. I actually think we need a bit of a grouping, probably back in here as well. I'm just comparing it side to side here. Yeah, I think we need to duplicate that group again. And remember, because we're duplicating it, we're not using a lot more memory. It's still only reading in the one tree into the computer's memory. So, and so if you are making a game, doing a duplicate will help in cutting down on the amount of memory you use. I just want to make sure that the tree isn't intersecting that elm too much. Alright, now I'm going to do another duplicate. So I want them on either side of our pathway here, because again I think that will help to add interest through here. So I'm going to do a duplicate on that grouping one more time. And we'll bring it in just until it's just covering the sides of our walkway there. And because we want to keep everything looking balanced, we'll duplicate it to the other side. I may just rotate it a little bit to make it look a little bit different. Again, I want to avoid any intersection happening like through here. And the easiest way to do that will be just to raise the tree a bit. Okay. So we're just going to start back at the beginning here and check our handiwork. I'm just going to deselect that for a moment. So again, you see how having a higher tree breaks up that everything on the same level look that we were getting. We move through. Let's look at the other side of our terrace here. We'll do the same thing. We're going to grab that grouping of 3. And we'll duplicate it. And pull it back. We'll have to pull it up a bit because it's intersecting our walkway. Actually, it's behind our walkway. It should be alright. I may rotate it around. Let's duplicate it one more time for the other side to keep it balanced. Okay. Now, I think this side's pretty much covered with our tree here, but this side looks a bit empty. So I think what we'll do is we'll take this grouping and do another duplicate. Again, you could have done I could have done this in the foliage paint tool, but I like to have this control as to exactly where I want to place things. Just helps to make it look a bit more, I don't know, particularly in areas like this along a garden path, because people will have planted these by hand. They won't have used like a computer algorithm to spread them out. Using the foliage tool is really good for things like the forest in the background, but areas in a garden where people generally will plant things by hand, I always think it's better to go in there and do it by hand. We're going to duplicate this grouping one more time and place it right next to this one to make it look a bit thicker. We'll do a rotation to make it less obvious that it's a group of the same tree. And I'm also going to go in and select a couple of them. I'm going to angle them a little bit so that they're not completely straight. Just a few here and there. And that'll just help to make them look a bit more interesting. It's probably harder to see here until we get the lighting back on again, but it'll just help to add more interest with the shadowing. Okay, so that's sort of covered up our little bare area there. I think we need two more groups through the front just here, so let's grab this group of three from this side. Again, let's just rotate it around a little bit so it's less obvious it's a group of the same tree. And to keep everything balanced, we need to place some on the opposite side. I think over here in this corner would look okay. And again, I'm going to go in and select one or two of them by hand and just angle them a little bit. Let's deselect them. Okay, let's fill in a couple of these empty areas around our bushes just to make them look like they blend a little better. Let's jump into our foliage tool. So I have a cattail flowering bush that I think would fill up those areas quite well and help to tie, it's a yellow bush you see in the background, help to tie the foreground into the background. So I'm just going to make sure everything is deselected I don't want. It's actually called snakeweed, I think. Yeah, it's this one here. We shouldn't have to make any adjustments, everything should be still set from when we used it last time. So let's just paint some of that in now. I've got to be careful I don't go too nuts with this because I really like using this as a tree, but I have a tendency to go a bit too much sometimes. I may have to undo that just a tiny bit. It may have gone over our path a bit too much. And that's just helped to fill in the empty areas between our flowering azalea bushes to help, again, define the path. So we're just going to jump back here to the start of our entryway and check out our handiwork. Okay. So we come along our path, we get to our slightly raised terrace section here. Then we come through and we come down. I thought about placing something in here, but I want to keep that open because it helps us look into the forest, particularly when we get our exponential fog turned back on. It'll help to add some depth. So I'm not going to place anything in the foreground here. I don't want to cover that up. And we come along until we get to here, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do here until we get to our building. I'll have to have a think about what I want to place in through there. So let's turn our exponential height fog back on, but it's not going to look completely correct until we do a rebuild on the lighting, which I won't be able to do just at the moment because it's going to take a little while. I'll do it after the stream and you'll see it tomorrow. So let's just jump back to the front of our walkway. And we'll just move our camera in a little bit. I think that's just helped to define our walkway, add a bit more colour. So this is where our camera will fly until we get to our main building, which will be in behind all of this. So anyway, guys, again, the colouring, the lighting is not looking completely right because the lighting needs to be rebuilt. But that'll take it it can take about 10 minutes to do a rebuild on the lighting. I think we'll leave it there for today. I will be back on again tomorrow and we'll continue doing this environment for our Art Deco building. We haven't actually brought the building into the engine yet, so we probably will do that next week at some stage, I imagine, before we start putting the interior pieces together. We've still got a bit of work to do on our landscape. So I'll do a rebuild on the lighting now, and tomorrow when I stream again, the lighting will be rebuilt and we can continue on with painting in our landscape. Sorry, the real Defied Chaos, I didn't see your message either. One other thing about overlapping UVs is the symmetry modifier a bad thing to use then. That would have both sides of the mesh using the same UV space. in a game engine like Unreal, if you use the symmetry modifier, you're going to get shadowing problems. You got to be really careful with overlapping UVs in a real-time engine like this. Anything real-time, when it bakes the light map, if your UVs are overlapping, it can have really weird shadowing problems. The mesh can shadow incorrectly. So I try and avoid overlapping UVs. I know it's used a bit sometimes to try and cut down on you, to try and make your texture look as high res as possible to use as much UV space. But you have to be really careful. So I try and avoid it. Yeah, and again, sorry dude for not seeing your question before I got too caught up in what I was doing. I'll be back on again tomorrow though at 5 PM Pacific time in the United States. The real Defied Chaos is saying if you make a custom second light map, would that fix it though? Well, Unreal makes a second light map automatically when you import your mesh. That can fix the lighting issue, but it can still, if the UVs are overlapping, it can still cause problems for the shadowing. So sometimes you can get away with overlapping your UVs, but generally I would avoid doing it. But it's Unreal's, when you import a model into Unreal, it creates a second UV map for your light channel, for your lighting anyway. But you can still get weird shadowing effects happening on the mesh. So again, I try and avoid doing it as much as I can. For some things it'll work okay, but for others, yeah. So I try and avoid doing any overlapping UVs if I can get away with it. It's just safer and easier to say, don't overlap your UVs, in a game engine anyway. I'll be back on again tomorrow, guys, at 5 PM Pacific time in the United States. So if you're not sure when I'm live, I always post to my Twitter page at PhilDoes3D when I'm live. So when my post goes up on my Twitter page, I'm live and the 10-minute countdown is on. I will be back on again tomorrow, though, at 5 PM. I do want to thank you guys very much for hanging out and for watching. I really do appreciate it. And thank you guys as well that popped into chat. It's always great to chat to you guys. The Real Detailed Chaos. A great stream, really awesome advice and tips. Back tomorrow. Cool. Thank you for watching, dude. I really do appreciate it. Thank all you guys that have been watching. Like I said, I appreciate that, and we'll be back on again tomorrow. We'll continue doing some work here on our Unreal Engine 4 environment for our Art Deco building. Again, thanks guys for hanging out and for watching. I'll be back on again tomorrow, and hopefully I'll see you guys then. Take care, guys.